Good morning and welcome students. In this e-class, we would be discussing about metaphysical poetry. There are three poets, John Donne, George Herbert and Andrew Marvell prescribed in your syllabus, and all three of them, they are metaphysical poets. So let us know what exactly is metaphysical poetry and a little detail about the three poets who are prescribed in your syllabus, who are termed as metaphysical poets. By the end of 16th and the beginning of 17th century, there was a revolt against the outdated and exhausted Elizabethan poetry. Means there was a change. And with this change, poets, they begin to examine and they observe the change in the word because of the scientific revolution. And this changed the poetical metaphors. So let us know what metaphysical poetry is. The term metaphysical was coined by the famous critic Samuel Johnson to describe a group of 17th century English poets who were not unified, but all their works, they were characterized by wit, conceits and irony, which was common to the works of all these poets. Although they were not unified and they hadn't formed a group, but still wit, conceit and irony, it was a common element in the poetry of all these poets. And they expressed a comparison, a metaphor or a conceit to bring two different objects together and identify a point of similarity or parallelism. Now this similarity or this parallelism was drawn from the sources which astonished many, from the geographical to the scientific to the new sources of knowledge. Conceits basically were far-fetched similes, means they were trying to bring together two very discordant, dissimilar objects together, which surprised many. Irony basically means it implies a distance between what is said and what is meant. So it actually gave a twist to the language. It gave a twist to the understanding of the language, the complexity in understanding the language. Literally, if we take up the word metaphysical, meta means beyond and physics means physical nature. So metaphysical basically meant something beyond the understanding of the people, means expressing a comparison, expressing a metaphor, expressing a conceit, which are ordinarily very different, things which are quite unlike, and when they are compared, the dissimilarities, they are quite stronger than the similarities which is actually brought forth. So these poems, they were quite unusual. And why they were unusual? Because of the use of these conceits, because of bringing together two very dissimilar, two very different objects which were not accustomed or which were not familiar to the mind of the readers. So in his initial use of the term, Johnson, he quoted just three poets, Cowley, Donne and Cleveland, and later singled out Colin Burrow. He singled out John Donne, George Herbert, Henry Vaughan, Andrew Marvell and Richard Crashaw as central figures. You're going to read John Donne, Death Be Not Proud, his poem, George Herbert's The Pulley, and Andrew Marvell's To His Coy Mistress in the syllabus this year. If we take up the chief characteristics of metaphysical poetry, then metaphysical poetry is marked by philosophical exploration. The diction is quite colloquial. It is not a usual sort of a diction. It is a colloquial diction. It is not literal in the sense as it was used before. Conceits, I told you earlier, they are far-fetched similes. Irony is a distance between what is said and what is meant. The difference between what is said and what is meant. Metrically flexible lines, and the topics of these poems generally included love, religion, morality, which these metaphysical poets, they tried to bring forth through unusual comparisons, frequently employing unexpected similes and metaphors and display of wit. The word metaphysical was first used by Dryden with reference to John Donne in 1693, and he wrote, "Donne affects the metaphysics." Dr. Johnson, he confirmed the word metaphysical by coining the term in his book Lives of the Most Eminent English Poets, 1179 to 1781. The approach of metaphysical poetry was towards a clear vision, towards preciseness, towards the blending of wit and emotions, and the unconventional metaphors, conceits, by bringing together the images from science, geography, environment, and a lyrical flow of thought and verse and expression of divinity in nature. One very important aspects of metaphysical poets are that they are very, very intelligent poets. And we are really astonished by their knowledge, or their bringing together the images from various sources. We have three prominent metaphysical poets prescribed in our syllabus: John Donne with his poem Death Be Not Proud, Andrew Marvell, his poem To His Coy Mistress, and George Herbert, his poem prescribed in your syllabus, The Pulley. Let us discuss the characteristics of these poets. John Donne is a prominent metaphysical poet. All discourse on metaphysical poetry, they begin with John Donne. He was hailed as the father of metaphysical school of poetry. Dryden used the term metaphysical in connection with Donne's poetry, and he wrote, "Donne affects the metaphysics." Donne's poetry is metaphysical in its technique and style. It is heavily overloaded with conceits. Conceits, I told you earlier also, is the use of far-fetched similes, means bringing together things which are ordinarily very different, which are very unlike, and when they are compared, you can notice the dissimilarities in them, means they are quite dissimilar as far as conventional bringing together of things they were concerned. Donne's poetry are personal in concern, and he develops conceits to its full imagination. And he brings contemporary events like sea journeys, territorial conquest, the geographical discoveries, the geographical inventions, and the peculiarity of metaphysical lies in the fact that they use figures of speech excessively. Their similes and metaphors, they are far-fetched, and their images, they are logical and intellectual rather than sensuous or emotional. But all metaphysical poems, they are not love poems. Religion and religious devotion are other very popular themes. So the symbolic meanings in the Bible, they are drawn out in the metaphysical conceits. George Herbert's The Pulley brings out the theme from the Bible. George Herbert, another important metaphysical poet, born in 1593, died in 1633, celebrates life, energy, rhythm, and vitality in his poem. He has composed 169 poems in 140 stanza patterns, and his famous poems include Collar, the Quip, and the Pulley, which is prescribed in your syllabus. Herbert also made extensive use of the technique of conceits, and his works, it draws a pattern through the lines. He introduced a balance of thought and content in his poetry. Kazamin, he says that George Herbert, he is the saint of the metaphysical school, and he often gives an impression of a sort of sublimity. The poem to his coy mistress, which is prescribed in your syllabus, is written by Andrew Marvell. Andrew Marvell is another famous metaphysical poet, born in 1621 and died in 1678. He is best known for his elaborate poem on the theme of Seize the Day to his coy mistress. The sense of romantic vastness, remarkable intensity, and the love for his beloved has been artistically portrayed in this poem. He emphasizes the shortness of time. The immediacy is something which is emphasized in the poem, and he requests his beloved to consummate their love as time is very short. So all these metaphysical poets, they are like clever lawyers. They put forth arguments after arguments to prove their point. And Marvell, he belongs to metaphysical school of poetry. His poem also upholds the significant metaphysical features. And as far as his poetry is concerned, we can notice precision of style, polish, diction, regular rhyme, and the use of wit and irony. So, keeping in mind the term metaphysical poets, while you read these three poets, Andrew Marvell, John Donne, and George Herbert, just think about the poetry of revolt which came with these poets. And I told you earlier also that although these poets, they were not unified, they didn't form a group, but wit, irony, and conceits, they were so common in all these poets that they have been termed as a group. So, with their fantastic conceits, with their fantastic imagery, and the intellectual element that they brought forth in poetry, drawing their element from various sources, enjoy reading these poets.